Look at them, hoodies, sneakers. They don't belong in first class." That's what the gate agent whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. He didn't know that the two black men he was blocking from the VIP lounge weren't just passengers. They were Damon and Darius Thorne, the twin CEOs who had just quietly acquired the airline's parent company that morning. They were denied their seats for a VIP white passenger who turned out to be a mid-level manager at their own subsidiary. What happens when the people you humiliate turn out to be the ones signing your paycheck? One phone call changed everything. The crew didn't just lose their jobs, they lost their careers. This is the story of the ultimate karma. The air inside JFK International Airport was stale, recycled, and thick with the tension of a holiday weekend delay. At Gate 42, the queue for Vista Atlantic Airlines, Flight 808 to London Heathrow, was already snaking back toward the food court. Damon Thorne adjusted the hood of his cashmere pullover. It was a nondescript slate grey, but to a trained eye, the lack of logos and the perfect drape signaled Loro Piana, a piece worth more than the gate agent's Honda Civic. Beside him, his identical twin, Darius, tapped away on a cracked iPhone screen, seemingly oblivious to the stares they were receiving. Boarding Group 1, First Class, and Diamond Medallion members, you are welcome to board, the voice over the intercom announced. It was smooth, practiced, and completely at odds with the sneer on the face of the man holding the microphone. Gregson, that was the name on his silver name tag. Lead gate agent, Gregson. Damon and Darius picked up their duffel bags, worn leather weekender bags that had seen better days, and stepped toward the priority lane. They were tired. They had spent the last 72 hours in a negotiation room in Midtown Manhattan, surviving on espresso and adrenaline. They just wanted to sleep. As they reached the podium, Gregson didn't even look at their boarding passes. He put a hand up, palm out, like a traffic cop stopping a jaywalker. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Gregson said, his voice loud enough to silence the front row of the economy line. "Zone 5 boarding is that way. We're currently only boarding first class and VIPs." Damon paused, blinking slowly. He held out his phone, the QR code for a first-class suite visible on the screen. "We are first class, seats 1A and 1B. Gregson let out a short, incredulous huff. He looked the twins up and down. He saw the comfortable streetwear, the tired eyes, the dark skin. He didn't see the billions in assets. He didn't see the two minds that had revolutionized logistics software in Silicon Valley before turning 30. "Likely a system error?" Gregson muttered, not even reaching for the scanner. "Look, guys, I don't have time for upgrades obtained through questionable third-party apps. Step aside. You're blocking the flow for our actual priority guests." "Scan the ticket, Gregson," Darius said. His voice was calm, almost bored, but it carried a weight that usually made boardrooms go silent. "It's Mr. Gregson to you," the agent snapped. "And I'm telling you, step aside. Security is on standby." Just then, a man in a beige linen suit bustled past them. He was red-faced, sweating, and holding a gold-embossed passport holder. He bumped Darius's shoulder hard, not apologizing. Coming through," the man huffed. "I'm a Platinum Global member. Let's get this moving, shall we?" Gregson's face transformed instantly. The sneer melted into a sycophantic smile. "Ah, Mr. Preston Wells. Of course, right this way, sir. Apologies for the obstruction." He shot a glare at Damon. "Some passengers struggle to understand their assigned zones." Mr. Wells glanced back at the twins, offering a tight, pitiful smile. "Economy is becoming quite aggressive these days, isn't it?" "We aren't economy," Damon said, stepping into the lane again. "Scan. The code." Gregson slammed his hand on the counter. The sound echoed. That is enough. You are disrupting the boarding process. I am denying you boarding for aggressive behavior. Step away from the podium now, or you aren't flying to London at all. You can take the bus for all I care." Damon felt the heat rise in his chest, the familiar burn of injustice that no amount of money seemed to wash away. He opened his mouth to shred Gregson with a verbal dismantling of airline policy, but Darius put a hand on his brother's chest. Darius looked at Gregson, memorizing his face. Then he looked at Mr. Wells, who was chuckling as he walked down the jet bridge. "Okay," Darius said softly. "We'll wait." "You won't wait here," Gregson spat. "Stand against the wall. Wait until every single passenger has boarded. If there's space left near the toilets, maybe I'll let you on." The twins moved to the wall. The line of passengers filed past them. Some looked away in embarrassment. Others looked at them with suspicion, clutching their bags tighter. "Why are we doing this?" Damon whispered, his jaw tight. "We could buy this plane, Darius. We could buy this airport." "Not the airport," Darius corrected, checking an email on his phone. "But we did just close the deal on the holding group, didn't we? The ink dried at 8:00 a.m. Damon looked at his brother, and a slow, cold smile spread across his face. "Does Vista Atlantic know yet?" "The memo goes out Monday," Darius said. "Currently nobody knows except the board of directors and us." "So," Damon watched Gregson berating a young mother about her stroller size. "Technically, we are his bosses." "Technically," Darius agreed. "We are the owners of the entire fleet." They stood there for 45 minutes. They watched the entire plane board. They watched Gregson high-five a co-worker, laughing and pointing in their direction. Finally, with the jet bridge empty and the departure time looming, Gregson waved them over like he was summoning a dog. "All right, you got lucky. 2 seats open in the back. Row 48. Non-reclining. Take it or leave it." Damon looked at the scanner. "Our tickets are for 1A and 1B. "Those seats were released," Gregson smirked. "VIP priority. Mr. Wells needed extra room for his comfort. Now, are you getting on my plane, or not?" Darius tapped his phone one last time. "We're getting on." But as they walked down the jet bridge, the air didn't feel like a vacation. It felt like the calm before a very violent storm. The aircraft was a Boeing 777 300ER, a massive bird usually associated with luxury and long-haul comfort, but the walk of shame through the cabin was designed to strip away dignity. As Damon and Darius walked through the business-class cabin, they saw the champagne being poured. They saw the passengers settling into lie-flat pods. And then they reached the first-class section at the very front, where they should have been. There, sprawled across both seats, 1A and 1B, was Mr. Preston Wells. He had the partition lowered. His suit jacket was thrown over 1A, and he was sitting in 1B, sipping a mimosa. He had turned the 2 most expensive seats on the plane into his personal living room. A flight attendant, whose name tag read Shelley, was fluffing a pillow for him. "Excuse me," Damon said, stopping at the row. Shelley looked up, her smile tight and artificial. "Sir, you need to keep moving. Economy is all the way back." "These are our seats," Damon said, holding up his phone again. 1A and 1B. This gentleman is occupying seats we paid $12,000 for. Preston Wells looked up over his reading glasses. "Oh, it's the hoodlums from the gate. Shelley, dear, are they allowed to be up here? I feel threatened." "Sir, please lower your voice," Shelley said to Damon, her tone sharp. "Mr. Wells is a diamond-tier guest. The gate agent reassigned these seats because of a technical failure with your reservation. The failure is that you gave our seats to a white man because you didn't think we could afford them," Darius said. He wasn't whispering anymore. The cabin went quiet. "That is an accusation I will not tolerate," Shelley snapped. Mr. Wells is a personal friend of the pilot, Captain Miller. When he asks for space, he gets it. Now, if you say one more word, I will have the Federal Air Marshals escort you off. Move. Now. Preston Wells laughed, a wet, ugly sound. Go on, boys. Go sit by the toilets. Maybe you can sell some mixtapes back there. Damon's fists clenched at his sides. The racism wasn't even subtle. It was comfortable. It was practiced. It was the kind of racism that knew it had the system on its side. They walked. They walked past premium economy. They walked past the exit rows. They walked until they hit the very back wall of the plane, row 48. The seats didn't recline. The smell of the lavatory was already potent. Damon threw his bag into the overhead bin with a little more force than necessary. I'm calling the lawyer. No, Darius said, buckling his seatbelt. He looked out the window at the tarmac. We don't need a lawyer. We need the manifest. What? I need to know who Preston Wells is, Darius said, because if he's a friend of the pilot and a VIP, he's in the system. And since we own the system... Darius pulled out a tablet from his bag. It wasn't a normal iPad. It was a secure link terminal used for high-level corporate access. He connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi, which was already active at the gate. You're hacking the flight, Damon whispered. I'm not hacking, Darius replied calmly, his fingers flying across the screen. I'm logging in. I have root administrator access. I own the servers. A few seconds later, Darius's eyebrows shot up. Well. What is it? Mr. Preston Wells isn't just a passenger. Darius turned the screen to Damon. He's the regional director of supply chain for Vista Atlantic. He's an employee. He's flying on a deadhead ticket, meaning he's flying for free on company standby. Damon stared at the screen. The man who had stolen their $12,000 seats, the man who had called them hoodlums, was a middle manager flying on a free pass. And Gregson? Damon asked. Gregson manually overrode our paid tickets code F-Class full fare, to upgrade a non-revenue employee. Darius read the log files. That is immediate grounds for termination. It's theft. He stole revenue from the airline to favor his buddy. They didn't just insult us, Damon whispered, a dark joy entering his eyes. They stole from us. They stole from the owners. The pilot, Captain Miller, signed off on it too, Darius noted. He authorized the manifest change 10 minutes ago. The plane lurched. The engines whined to life. They were pushing back. We can't let this plane take off, Damon said. If we take off, we're stuck in this metal tube for 7 hours with them laughing at us. Agreed, Darius said. He minimized the flight manifest and opened a contact simply labeled the board. I'm not calling a lawyer. I'm calling Richard Halloway. Richard Halloway was the former CEO, now chairman, of the airline. He was the man who had sold the company to the twins yesterday. He was currently still in the transition phase, technically in charge of operations until the press release. Darius hit the call button on his phone. Sir, you need to turn that off, a junior flight attendant said, looming over them. We are taxiing. 1 second, Darius said, holding a finger up. Now, she barked. This is the most expensive phone call this airline will ever pay for, Darius said, looking her dead in the eye. I suggest you let me make it. The attendant blinked, taken aback by his confidence. In that split second of hesitation, the call connected. Darius? A gravelly voice answered over the speaker. We just signed the papers. Why are you calling me on a Saturday? Richard, Darius said, his voice crystal clear. I'm currently on flight 808. I'm sitting in row 48 next to the toilet. What? Why? Richard sounded confused. You boys are supposed to be in the suites. I booked them myself as a signing bonus. We were, Darius said, his eyes fixed on the front of the plane. But your gate agent, Mr. Gregson, and your lead flight attendant, Shelley, decided that two black men in hoodies didn't look like they belonged in 1A and 1B. So they gave our seats to your regional director, Preston Wells, who is currently drinking my champagne and calling us hoodlums. There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. The kind of silence that precedes an earthquake. Preston Wells bumped the new owners of the airline to economy? Richard asked, his voice dropping an octave. Yes, and he did it with the captain's authorization. Darius, Richard said, and the twins could hear the sound of a chair scraping back and a car door slamming in the background. Do not turn off your phone. Hand it to the flight attendant. Darius smiled. He looked at the junior flight attendant, who was still hovering nervously. Ma'am, Darius said politely, the chairman of the board would like to speak to you. He held the phone out. She looked at the phone, then at Darius, then at the dirty sneaker marks on the seat back in front of him. She scoffed. Yeah, right. Put it away. I strongly suggest you take it, Damon said, unless you want to explain to Richard Halloway why you hung up on him. Her face went pale at the name. Halloway was a legend in the industry, a god. Trembling, she took the phone. Hello? She whispered. The twins couldn't hear what Richard said, but they watched the blood drain from her face so fast she looked like she might faint. Her eyes went wide. She looked at the twins with pure, unadulterated terror. Yes, Mr. Halloway. Yes, immediately. I understand. Oh, God, yes, sir. She lowered the phone, her hand shaking violently. She looked at Damon and Darius, her voice barely a squeak. He wants to speak to Captain Miller. Immediately. We're taxiing, Damon pointed out. He said stop the plane, she whispered. He said stop the plane, right now. The junior flight attendant, whose name tag read Sarah, held the phone like it was a live grenade. She scrambled up the aisle, dodging the beverage carts that were just being prepped. Shelley, the lead flight attendant who had kicked the twins out of first class, intercepted her at the curtain, dividing economy from premium. Sarah, what on earth are you doing? Shelley hissed, grabbing the junior attendant's arm. We are taxiing. Sit down before you fall. It's for the captain, Sarah stammered, her eyes wide with panic. It's Mr. Halloway, the chairman. Shelley rolled her eyes so hard it looked painful. She snatched the phone from Sarah's trembling hand. Don't be an idiot, Sarah. It's probably one of their friends playing a prank. Those two in the back probably used a voice changer app. I've seen it on TikTok. Shelley put the phone to her ear, ready to deliver a scathing lecture. Listen to me, whoever this is. Interfering with a flight crew is a federal offense. I am hanging up and having the police waiting for your friends at the... Shelley Vance, employee ID 49204. The voice on the other end boomed. It wasn't shouting. It was a cold, hard, commanding baritone that vibrated through the speaker. This is Richard Halloway. If you hang up this phone, I will personally ensure you are blacklisted from every service industry job in the Northern Hemisphere. Do not speak. Listen. Shelley froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She recognized the voice. Everyone in the company knew the voice of the founder. It was the voice from the training videos. The voice from the holiday voicemails. You are to march into the cockpit. You are to hand this phone to Captain Miller. If he refuses to take it, you tell him code red Omega 7. Do you understand? See code red? Shelley squeaked. That was the code for a hijacking or critical structural failure. Move, now. Shelley turned, her face the color of old ash. She stumbled through the first-class cabin. Mr. Preston Wells, still lounging in the seat he had stolen from Damon Thorne, looked up from his champagne glass. Everything all right, sweetheart? Preston asked, wiping a bit of mimosa from his lip. "Service is a bit slow today." Shelley didn't even hear him. She banged on the reinforced cockpit door. "Captain! Captain, open up! Emergency!" The door clicked and buzzed open. Captain Miller, a silver-haired man with the jawline of a movie star and the arrogance of a king, turned around in his seat. "Shelley, we are third in line for takeoff. This better be life or death." "Phone," she whispered, thrusting the device at him. It's Holloway. He said code Red Omega 7. Miller's eyes narrowed. He snatched the phone. "This is Miller. Who is this?" Damon and Darius, sitting all the way back in row 48, could feel the exact moment the conversation changed. The plane, which had been creeping forward, suddenly slammed to a halt. The brakes shrieked. Passengers lurched forward in their seats. "Hey, watch it!" a passenger in 47C yelled. But the twins just watched the front of the plane. They couldn't see the cockpit, but they could feel the panic radiating backward. On the phone, Captain Miller was no longer shouting. He was listening, and as he listened, his grip on the yoke tightened until his knuckles were white. "You have 2 unauthorized passengers in first class." Holloway's voice was audible even to the co-pilot. "And you have the owners of Vista Atlantic sitting by the lavatory. You have exactly 5 minutes to get this aircraft back to the gate, Miller, or I am grounding your license for gross negligence." "Owners," Miller stammered. "Sir, the airline was sold to a holding company called Gemini Ventures. Nobody knows who runs it." "Look at the passenger manifest for seats 1A and 1B, Holloway snapped. "Damon and Darius Thorne. Gemini. Twins. Do the math, you imbecile. You just kicked your bosses into the toilet row." Miller looked at the co-pilot. The co-pilot looked at the manifest screen. He tapped the name Gemini Ventures in the corporate database. The names of the signatories popped up. Damon Thorne. Darius Thorne. Miller felt his stomach drop through the floor of the cockpit. He had authorized the seat swap. He had signed the paper giving Preston Wells the upgrade. "Tower," Miller said, his voice shaking. "This is Vista 808, requesting immediate return to gate. We have a passenger manifest discrepancy." The announcement over the PA system came 30 seconds later. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We have a slight administrative issue that needs to be resolved on the ground. We will be returning to the gate immediately. We apologize for the inconvenience." A collective groan went up through the cabin. People slammed their laptops shut. Babies started crying. In first class, Preston Wells slammed his fist onto the armrest. "Unbelievable! I have a meeting in London. This airline is going to hell." In row 48, Darius took his phone back from the trembling junior flight attendant, Sarah, who had run back to return it. "Thank you, Sarah," Darius said gently. "You can go buckle in." Did you do this?" the man next to them asked, eyeing the twins suspiciously. "Did you guys get kicked off?" Damon adjusted his hoodie, a small shark-like smile playing on his lips. "We didn't get kicked off. We're just rearranging the seating chart." The plane made a slow, agonizing U-turn on the tarmac. To everyone else, it was an annoyance. To the crew, it was a funeral procession. When the seatbelt sign turned off at the gate, the atmosphere was thick with aggression. The passengers were furious. They blamed the delay on whatever administrative issue the captain had mentioned. Suddenly, the front door of the aircraft opened. Usually, a gate agent steps in to deal with paperwork. But this time, 4 uniformed officers from the Port Authority Police Department marched onto the plane. Behind them came a woman in a sharp navy suit, Victoria Vance, the airport station manager for Vista Atlantic. And behind her, skulking like a hyena, was Gregson, the gate agent. Gregson looked triumphant. He had seen the plane come back and assumed the hoodlums had caused a scene. He assumed he was being brought on to identify them so they could be arrested. Gregson grabbed the PA microphone at the front of the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the delay," Gregson announced, his voice oozing with fake sympathy. "We have 2 disruptive passengers in the rear of the aircraft who refused to follow crew instructions. Once the police remove them, we will be on our way. Thank you for your patience." The cabin erupted in murmurs. People stood up, craning their necks to look at the back. "It's those 2. Someone pointed at Damon and Darius. "The ones in the hoodies." "Get them off!" another passenger yelled. "I have a connection to make." Preston Wells, still in seat 1B, stood up and clapped slowly. "Bravo. Finally, some security. Get the trash out so we can fly." The police officers began to move down the aisle. Victoria Vance, the station manager, walked with them, her face grim. Gregson followed, practically skipping. As they reached row 48, the twins didn't stand up. They didn't raise their hands. They sat perfectly still, legs crossed. Officer Miller, no relation to the captain, stopped at the row. He looked at the twins. Then he looked at the description on his notepad. Then he looked at Gregson. "These are the men?" the officer asked. "That's them," Gregson smirked, pointing a finger at Damon's chest. "Disruptive, aggressive, likely fraudulent tickets. Drag them out." Damon looked at the officer. "Officer, before you lay a hand on me, I suggest you ask Ms. Van Dor why she is really here." Gregson laughed. "She's here to ban you, genius." Victoria Vance stepped forward. She was trembling slightly, but her voice was steel. She had just gotten off the phone with the global HR director. She knew exactly what was happening. "Officer," Victoria said, her voice cutting through the noise, "these men are not to be touched." Gregson's smile faltered. "What?" "Victoria, they—" "Shut up, Gregson!" she snapped. Victoria turned to face the crowded cabin. She took a deep breath. She looked at Damon and Darius with an expression of profound apology. "Mr. Thorne. Mr. Thorne." She nodded to each of them. "On behalf of Vista Atlantic, I am mortified. We have received instructions from the board of directors." She turned to the police officer. "Officer, we are not here to remove these men. We are here to report a theft." "Theft?" The officer looked confused. "What was stolen?" "Corporate property and revenue," Darius said, finally standing up. He rose to his full height, looming over Gregson. "Specifically, the theft of services totaling $12,000 and the unauthorized manipulation of a federal flight manifest." Darius pointed a long finger at the front of the plane. "That man in seat 1B, Preston Wells, is currently in possession of stolen property. My seat." Then he pointed at Gregson. "And this man facilitated the fraud." Gregson laughed nervously. "You're crazy. Who do you think you are?" Damon stood up next to his brother. He pulled down the zipper of his hoodie to reveal the T-shirt underneath. It wasn't a band tee. It was a simple black shirt with a small, embroidered logo. Gemini Ventures. "We aren't just passengers, Gregson," Damon said, his voice projecting so the whole back of the plane could hear. "We're the people who bought this airline at 8 a.m. this morning." A hush fell over the back rows. "You bumped the CEO and the COO to the bathroom row so you could give a free seat to your buddy," Damon continued. "And now you're going to fix it." Preston Wells, realizing the commotion wasn't dying down, stormed back from first class. "What is taking so long? Gregson, why are they still talking?" Darius looked at Preston Wells. Then he looked at the police officer. "Officer," Darius said, "I would like to press charges against that man for fraud and theft of services. He is flying on a stolen ticket." Preston turned purple. "Do you know who I am? I am a regional director." "Not anymore," Darius said coldly. As of 5 minutes ago, your credentials have been revoked. You're trespassing. Victoria Vance nodded to the officer. It's true, I just received the email. Mr. Wells has been terminated for cause, effective immediately. He has no valid ticket for this flight. The colour drained from Preston Wells' face, so fast it looked like a magic trick. He looked at Gregson. Gregson looked at the floor. Officer, Damon said, checking his watch, I'd like my seat back. Please remove the trespasser. The police officer stepped toward Preston Wells. Sir, grab your bags. You need to come with us. You can't do this, Wells shrieked as the officer grabbed his arm. I know the captain. Miller, tell them. Captain Miller didn't come out of the cockpit. The door stayed firmly shut. He was currently frantically deleting emails, trying to save his own skin. As Preston Wells was frog-marched down the aisle, struggling and shouting, the passengers who had previously judged the twins watched in stunned silence. The hoodlums hadn't just won, they had nuked the battlefield. But the twins weren't done. Damon turned his gaze to Gregson, who was now sweating profusely, backing away toward the galley. Going somewhere, Mr. Gregson? Damon asked softly. I was just following protocol, Gregson stammered. I didn't know. If I had known. If you had known we were rich, you would have treated us with respect? Darius finished for him. That's the problem, Gregson. You treated us like trash because you thought we were powerless. That's not a protocol issue. That's a character issue. Darius turned to Victoria Vance. Ms. Vance, does this aircraft have a working PA system that reaches the entire plane, including the gate area? Yes, sir, she said. Good. Darius adjusted his cuffs. I think it's time for an all-hands meeting. Give me the mic. The PA system crackled to life. Usually, this sound signaled a safety demonstration or a weather update. Today, it was the sound of judgment. Darius Thorne stood at the front of the economy cabin, the spiral cord of the handset coiled around his fist. He looked out at the sea of faces, passengers who were tired, frustrated, and confused. But he also looked at the staff. Gregson, who was trembling by the galley, Shelley, who was weeping silently into a napkin, and the closed cockpit door where Captain Miller was hiding. Ladies and gentlemen, Darius began, his voice calm but booming through the overhead speakers. My name is Darius Thorne. My brother, Damon, and I are the new owners of Vista Atlantic. We acquired this airline at 8 a.m. this morning because we believed it had potential. He paused, letting the words settle. However, Darius continued, his eyes locking onto Gregson. We were just informed by your lead gate agent that we didn't fit the profile of first-class passengers. We were told our paid tickets were invalid. We were told to sit by the toilets while a company employee, Mr. Preston Wells, stole our seats to drink champagne on your dime. A murmur of anger rippled through the passengers. They knew what it felt like to be treated poorly by airlines. They were suddenly very much on the twins' side. Racism, Darius said, the word hanging heavy in the air, is expensive. It costs you dignity. It costs you talent. And today, it is going to cost this crew their jobs. Gregson stepped forward, his face red and sweaty. You can't do that. I have a union rep. You can't just fire me on a microphone. There's a process. Damon stepped up beside his brother. He wasn't holding a microphone. He was holding a tablet displaying the Vista Atlantic Employee Code of Conduct. Article 4. Section 2. Damon read aloud, his voice projecting clearly. Any employee found falsifying manifests, stealing revenue, or engaging in discriminatory practices against customers forfeits all severance and union protections immediately. Damon looked up. You didn't just insult us, Gregson. You stole $24,000 worth of revenue to upgrade your friend. That is gross misconduct. The process is done. Damon pointed to the open cabin door. Hand over your badge. Get off my plane. Gregson looked around for support. He looked at Victoria Vance, the station manager. She just held out her hand, waiting for the badge. Give it to me, Jerry, she said softly. It's over. With shaking hands, Gregson unclipped his ID. He threw it on the floor and stomped off the jet bridge, muttering curses. And now, Darius turned to Shelley and the flight attendants. The cabin crew. Shelley stepped forward, mascara running down her cheeks. Please, she begged. I have a mortgage. I have 2 kids in college. I was just following the captain's orders. He told me to make Mr. Wells comfortable. You threatened to call the air marshals on us, Darius said, his voice devoid of sympathy. You saw 2 paying customers being humiliated, and you joined in because it made you feel powerful. You aren't safe to be in the sky. But who will serve the flight? A passenger shouted from row 10. We want to go to London. A fair question, Darius nodded to the passenger. We aren't going to make you fly with a crew that hates you. Victoria? Victoria Vance stepped up to the mic. We have a reserve crew on standby in Terminal 4. They are currently being shuttled over. We will be delayed another 45 minutes. But, she looked at the twins. But, Darius finished, to compensate you for this mess, Damon and I are authorizing a full refund for every single passenger on this plane. You are flying to London for free, and everyone gets a $1,000 travel voucher for future use. The cabin exploded. The tension evaporated instantly, replaced by cheering and applause. People were high-fiving. The inconvenience was forgotten. The justice was sweet. Now, Darius turned his back on the cheering crowd and faced the cockpit. We have one last rat to catch. The cockpit door opened before they could knock. Captain Miller stepped out. He wasn't wearing his hat. He had his jacket over his arm and his flight kit in his hand. He looked furious, but he held his head high, trying to maintain a shred of dignity. You don't have to fire me, Miller spat, his voice low so the passengers couldn't hear. I quit. I'm not flying for a couple of amateurs who think running an airline is a reality TV show. You're not quitting, Damon corrected him, stepping into his path. You're being terminated for cause, and I'm filing a report with the FAA regarding your falsification of flight logs. You won't fly a crop duster when I'm done with you. Miller sneered. You think you can touch me? I've been with this airline for 20 years. I know where the bodies are buried. Is that a threat? Darius asked, tilting his head. It's a promise, Miller whispered. Preston Wells wasn't just a director. He handled logistics for the entire eastern seaboard. You just arrested the guy who keeps your cargo moving. Good luck with customs in London. Miller shoved past them, marching down the aisle to a chorus of boos from the passengers. Get out of here, someone yelled. Racist, another shouted. As Miller exited the plane, the twins stood in the empty first-class galley. The plane was now devoid of staff. It was just the passengers and the owners. Did you hear what he said? Damon asked quietly. About the cargo? Darius nodded. I heard. Why was he so protective of Preston Wells? Damon mused. Racism is one thing, but risking your career to upgrade a middle manager, that feels sticky. Darius looked at seat 1A and 1B, the seats they were finally about to occupy. They were empty now, but the mess Preston Wells had left remained. A crumpled napkin, a half-empty glass, and the in-flight magazine jammed haphazardly into the side pocket. Let's wait for the new crew, Darius said. And while we wait, I want to see exactly what Mr. Wells was doing in our seat. 40 minutes later, the atmosphere on Flight 808 had transformed. The new crew had arrived, a diverse team led by a purser named Marcus, a black man with a military posture and a warm smile. He had shaken the twins' hands with a grip that said, "Thank you," more than words ever could. The passengers were happy, sipping complimentary drinks. The plane was finally pushing back from the gate. Again. Damon and Darius were finally seated in 1A and 1B. The leather was soft. The legroom was infinite. But they couldn't relax. "Miller's comment is bothering me," Damon said, reclining his seat slightly. He said Wells handled logistics, but Wells is in supply chain for catering. Why would he matter to customs? Darius was digging through the side pocket of seat 1B. He pulled out the safety card. He pulled out the vomit bag. Then his fingers brushed against something hard, and plastic stuck deep in the crevice between the seat cushion and the wall. "Hello," Darius whispered. He fished it out. It wasn't a phone. It was a USB drive taped to the back of a small black notebook. "Preston must have shoved this down here when the cops came," Darius said. He panicked. "What is it?" Darius opened the notebook. It wasn't a diary. It was a ledger. Hand-written columns of dates, flight numbers, and weights. Flight 808, JFK to LHR, 12 kilos, approved, Miller. Flight 402, JFK to CDG, 8 kilos, approved, Miller. Flight 990, MIA to JFK, 20 kilos, approved, Miller. Kilos? Damon frowned. Kilos of what? Catering supplies. You don't measure napkins in kilos, Darius said, his voice tightening. And you don't need the captain's personal approval for sandwiches. Darius flipped to the back of the book. There were names: Gregson, Shelley, Miller. Next to each name was a dollar amount. Gregson, 5,000 MO. Shelley, 2,500 MO. Miller, 15,000 MO. Holy, Damon exhaled. It wasn't just a good old boys club, it was a payroll. They weren't just being racist, Darius realized, the pieces clicking together like a terrifying puzzle. They were nervous. They didn't want us in seat 1A because they treat this seat as their personal office. Preston Wells needed to be here to oversee whatever is in the cargo hold. Darius plugged the USB drive into his secure tablet. He bypassed the encryption. He was a tech mogul after all. The files opened. They weren't drugs. Palladium, Darius read the manifest. Industrial-grade palladium bars, stolen from catalytic converter recycling plants in Jersey, smuggled to London where the market is unregulated. They're using our planes to smuggle rare earth metals, Damon asked, stunned. In the catering carts? Look at the emails, Darius pointed. Preston Wells is the mule. Gregson fudges the weight limits at the gate so the heavy carts don't get flagged. Miller flies the plane and ensures no one checks the manifest. Shelley watches the cabin to make sure no one snoops near the front galley. That's why she was so aggressive, Damon realized. She wasn't just protecting a VIP. She was guarding the stash. Damon looked out the window. The clouds were drifting by. They were at 30,000 feet. We just fired an entire smuggling ring, Damon said. But the cargo, it's still on the plane. Darius looked at the flight attendant call button. He pressed it. Marcus appeared instantly. Yes, Mr. Thorne? Can I get you anything? Marcus, Darius said, his voice serious. I need you to lock the front galley. No one goes in or out. And I need you to ask the new captain to come on the interphone. Is there a problem, sir? No. Darius smiled grimly. But when we land in London, we aren't going to the hotel. We need to have a welcome party waiting for this plane. Scotland Yard. The rest of the flight was a blur of covert activity. Using the in-flight Wi-Fi, Darius and Damon compiled the evidence. They emailed the ledger scans to their legal team in London. They contacted the UK authorities. They realized the karma they had served at the gate was just the appetizer. The main course was coming upon landing. As the plane began its descent into Heathrow, the pilot, Captain Evans, a stern but professional woman who had taken over, came over the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent. We have been asked by Air Traffic Control to taxi to a remote stand upon arrival for a standard customs inspection. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off. Damon looked at his brother. Standard inspection? I told them to bring the dogs. Darius grinned. When the doors opened at Heathrow, it wasn't a jet bridge that greeted them. It was a set of stairs, and at the bottom of the stairs were 5 police cars, lights flashing against the grey London dawn. The passengers were confused, whispering among themselves. Stay seated, everyone, Marcus announced. Authorities are boarding. 2 British detectives boarded the plane. They walked straight to seat 1A and 1B. Mr. Thorne? The detective asked. That's us, Darius said. He handed over the black notebook and the USB drive. I believe this belongs to the previous occupants of these seats, and if you check the catering carts in the forward galley, specifically cart number 404, according to the notes, you'll find the Palladium. The detective raised an eyebrow. You boys work fast. You've owned the airline for less than 24 hours and you've already busted a transatlantic smuggling ring. We like to clean house, Damon said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. We have the NYPD waiting at JFK to pick up Mr. Miller and Mr. Gregson, the detective said. Preston Wells is already in custody. Seems he was quite chatty once he realized he was facing felony charges without a lawyer. The detective looked at the twins. You realize this is going to be a massive scandal for the airline? Smuggling ring found on Vista Atlantic. No, Darius corrected him, putting on his sunglasses even though it was cloudy. The headline will be, New Owners Root Out Corruption on Day 1. It's not a scandal, detective. It's a rebranding. They walked down the stairs, the cool London air hitting their faces. They had been profiled, insulted, and delayed. But as they walked across the tarmac toward the waiting black SUVs, they knew they had done something more important than just flying. They had sent a message. But the story wasn't quite over. Because back in New York, Gregson and Miller weren't going down quietly. They had one last card to play. A media smear campaign claiming the twins had assaulted them. 3 days later, the story hadn't died down. It had mutated. Back in New York, while Damon and Darius were in London, meeting with the UK logistics teams, Jerry Gregson and Captain Miller had decided to go on the offensive. They knew the smuggling investigation was looming, but it was sealed. The public didn't know about the Palladium yet. All the public knew was that 2 long-time employees had been fired by aggressive new billionaire owners. Gregson, with a neck brace he definitely didn't need, sat on the couch of the Morning Pulse, a national talk show. Beside him sat Captain Miller, looking somber and patriotic in a suit. They were menacing, Gregson sobbed, dabbing dry eyes with a tissue. These 2 men, they came out of nowhere. No ID, hoodies up, gang mentality. They demanded first-class seats they didn't pay for. When I tried to follow protocol, they threatened my life. They said they'd buy the airline just to crush me. The host, a woman named Nancy, gasped. They bought the airline after the argument? No, Miller interjected, his voice grave. They apparently owned it already, but they didn't identify themselves. They baited us. It was a trap. They wanted to humiliate working-class Americans. I've served this country's skies for 20 years, Nancy, and I was thrown off my own plane like a criminal because I stood up for my crew. The headline on the screen read, Billionaire Bullies, Twin Tycoons Terrorize Veteran Crew. Social media was split. Half the internet was calling for a boycott of Vista Atlantic. The hashtag #BoycottGemini was trending. In the penthouse suite of the Savoy Hotel in London, Damon Thorne watched the broadcast on a tablet. He took a sip of tea and set the cup down with a distinct clink. "They're good actors," Damon admitted. "If I didn't know us, I'd hate us." Darius was standing by the window, looking out at the Thames. He wasn't watching the TV. He was on the phone with the legal department. "Are we ready?" Darius asked into the phone. "Yes, sir," the general counsel replied. "The security footage from Gate 42 has been scrubbed and cleared for release. We also have the cockpit voice recorder audio from the moment you called Holloway. And of course, the smuggling indictment from the NYPD just went public 5 minutes ago." "Drop it," Darius said. "All of it. Do it while they're still on air." Back in the studio, Nancy was leaning in sympathetically. "So, Mr. Gregson, you're saying you never used any racial slurs? You never profiled them?" "Never," Gregson cried. "I don't see color. I only see passengers." Suddenly, the large monitor behind them changed. The breaking news graphic flashed red. Nancy touched her earpiece. I'm getting word of a developing story. Vista Atlantic has just released a statement. And, oh my, they've released video." Gregson's face went pale. Miller stiffened. The screen cut to the grainy but high-definition security footage from JFK Gate 42. There was audio. The world watched as Gregson, clear as day, sneered at the twins. "Look at them. Hoodies, sneakers. They don't belong in first class." They heard him say, "Go sit by the toilets. Maybe you can sell some mixtapes back there." The studio audience gasped. The racism was undeniable. It was raw, ugly, and caught in 4K. But then, the video cut to a split screen. On the left was the footage. On the right was a copy of the official NYPD indictment. Nancy began to read it, her voice shaking. "Captain Stephen Miller and Jerry Gregson, charged with grand larceny, smuggling, and conspiracy to distribute stolen goods, involving a palladium ring worth $15 million. The camera cut back to the couch. Gregson wasn't crying anymore. He looked like a deer in headlights. Miller was trying to unclip his microphone, looking for an exit. "Is this true?" Nancy asked, her voice turning icy. "Captain Miller, were you using my show to cover up a smuggling operation?" "This is a setup," Miller shouted, standing up. "Cut the feed, I'm not—" 2 men in suits walked onto the live set. They weren't producers, they were FBI agents. "Stephen Miller, Jerry Gregson," the lead agent said, holding up a badge. "You're under arrest." "On live TV," Gregson shrieked as they cuffed him. "You can't do this!" "You wanted the spotlight, Jerry," the agent said, spinning him around. "Now you got it." 6 months later. The clip of the arrest became the most watched video of the year. The billionaire bully's narrative died instantly, replaced by the clean sweep. Vista Atlantic stock didn't crash, it tripled. Damon and Darius Thorne didn't retreat to a boardroom. They made changes. They redesigned the crew uniforms, allowing sneakers and comfortable, stylish hoodies for long-haul flights. They fired the entire executive board that had turned a blind eye to the smuggling. But the sweetest moment came on a Tuesday morning at JFK. Damon and Darius were flying out again, this time to Tokyo. They walked up to Gate 42. The new agent, a young Hispanic woman named Maria, smiled as they approached. She didn't look at their clothes. She looked at their eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne. Mr. Thorne," she beamed. "Zone 1 is ready for you, and we have your favorite sparkling water waiting in 1A and 1B. "Thank you, Maria," Damon said. As they walked down the jet bridge, Darius paused. He looked at the spot where Gregson used to stand, the spot where they had been told they were worthless. "You know," Darius said, adjusting his hoodie, "I think I like this airline." "I think I do too," Damon smiled. "We should keep it." They boarded the plane. This time, nobody stopped them. Nobody stared. They were just 2 men, flying on their own wings in a sky that was finally clear. The karma wasn't just revenge, it was justice. And justice, as it turns out, flies first class. And that is the story of how two CEOs turned a moment of disrespect into a revolution. It proves that you should never judge a book by its cover, or a billionaire by his hoodie. Gregson and Miller thought they were untouchable because of the uniform they wore, but they forgot that true power doesn't need to shout. It just needs to make one phone call. If you enjoyed this story of heavy karma and justice served cold, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder that what goes around comes around. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. Let me know in the comments, what would you have done if you were Damon or Darius? I'll see you in the next video.